Okay, so basically what we've done is we've gone through the feature parts that are all about adding material, creating material. So the next series or the next group is all about removing material. So your cuts. How do you cut it? What are your different ways to cut? And you can see that everything is, ignoring the whole wizard, extruded cut, revolved cut, swept cut, loft cut. So the commands are all identical, with the difference being that whatever you're doing it's to remove material. So with that said, let's kind of look at the extruded cut. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a sketch. Oops. So there I made a mistake. Let me just discard that. When you click on an object and I want to go make a sketch, you can see a couple things pop up. If I'm clicking on that, you see this and it shows edit sketch. This is where it gets confusing because you'll do this a lot. You'll be like, oh, I'm going to create a sketch. Well, SolidWorks, and for whatever reason, I've clicked on there. There's a sketch that created that object, so it puts up edit sketch here. Versus if I'm over here, it looks like the exact same icon, but if I click this first, then it says, well, what do you want to put on a sketch? Because it's creating a sketch. So we can come here. Oh. So here's a fun thing. So I can create a sketch on a planar surface, but it's not letting me do that on here. The moment I can't do something like that, well, why is it not letting me select this face? To me, that's always a, hey, there's a problem here. What that probably means is, for some reason, that's not a planar face. So you can kind of see that it's curved. If that's supposed to be completely flat, then I need to go back in, look at my profile sketch, and go, oh, so it's revolved, but this isn't planar. So let me make it 100% horizontal. We'll make this horizontal too, which it is. Make sure that's vertical. Now, if I come in and I go create new sketch, it lets me create a new sketch. So that's the thing again, like, okay, there's a problem, it's not letting me do something, it's asking that why. Or going back and evaluating the model and trying to find out what the problem is. One of the biggest things I can tell you right now is if it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you're working on your 3D model and you've been at it for 3 hours and you just can't seem to figure out what the problems are, get up, walk away. Because usually it's something little that you're missing, but you're so zoomed in and focused you can't see the bigger picture. So we're going to do an extruded cut. So with that said, what I'm going to do is I'll make my square, come to features, extruded cut, and it's the exact same thing. From sketch plane, from a surface plane, from a vertex, from an offset. So no different than what we just showed. We've got the blind feature, which means I can just drag it all the way down here, and it does a full cut. Now again, just like when we were doing the extrude, if I come back and I edit this sketch, and let's say I decide I want to have my body considerably longer, it doesn't go through anymore because that extrude cut was only through a distance. If I instead went from blind and went up to surface, just like before, no matter where I put that surface, that extrude cut will always go up there. So that's one of those things where when you're doing your design, you lock it in and it's like, well, I'm always going to want that hole through everything. How many clicks, if I change something, how many other clicks am I going to have to make? Or how much am I going to have to go back and change it? If I am working and I'm going, well, I don't like this, let's make it shorter, let's make it longer. Every time I do that, if I don't have that cut going through that surface, I've got to go back and re-edit that. That's where modeling takes a long time. That's where when you see people who are fast at 3D modeling, only part of it is finding the buttons quickly. The other part is knowing what command to use, when to use it, and where, so that you don't have to do duplicate work. Let's come back. We'll edit that again. Now, we can do the draft on this as well. Draft inwards, draft outwards. Let's just, again, that's more for a manufacturing aspect, but a lot of times that's an easy way to get that shape that you want. So let's just leave that with the hole there. Now, doing a swept, I'm going to use a swept cut for this. So using the swept cut, I can create a lot of different things. Again, you've got to think about removing material. So a swept cut is like using a CNC router. So I'm going to come in and I want to say, I want to do a contour on this lip that looks different or unique. So I'm going to come in, go to my right plane, I'm going to sketch, and I'm going to create a shape. Whoops. Come on, I don't want to do that. I'm going to create a unique shape. And that's my unique shape. It's really fancy. Now, I don't always have to draw a line for my profile path. So I'm going to do swept cut, and I've got the exact same option. There's my profile. Then I'm going to follow it around my path. So it looks as if it's going to add material, but it's just showing you what it is. So I'm going to come in, and there now I've gotten my removed cut. Now I could easily do that as well through a unique, squiggle along the side, or however we want to do it. So there's a variety of ways of doing things to get those cuts and those paths. And really, one of the things, again, once we have gone through these tools, we're going to start going through, and this will be your next assignment actually, is you're going to take a product and you're going to break it down into the geometric parts, and then you're going to call out, oh, this would be an extrude, this would be a cut, I would make this as a revolve. So that when you look at the design, you have a plan of how you're going to build that. This is where I'm talking about, we're not designing our own products yet. We're going to build products that are already designed so that it's a little bit easier. So that you're not trying to design it, learn how to model, and then figure out how to model it as well. So, Revolve Cut, you're going to select the plane. Well, let me ask you this. Do you guys want me to continue to walk through each one of these, the Revolve Cut, Lofted Cut, or do we think we have a good grasp on that? Thoughts, questions, comments?
Maybe let's go through them.
Okay. So let's do a revolve cut. So now remember, what we needed for a revolve object was a closed sketch. So for that, we're going to come up and we will build on the front plane. I want to create what I'm going to revolve it around. So here's my center line. I'm going to use the same center line as I made for that. And let's say for this, I'm going to draw a circle. And then I'm going to come in and I want to kind of match this profile. So let's say I want to match this profile perfectly. What I can do is I can click Convert Entities. So I want to take that edge. I'm going to click here. Whoop. And what it did, it's hard to see, but let me actually hide that so you can see it. It took that edge and drew that line. So now I know that that is perfect. I'm then going to take it, I'm going to offset it, and I'm going to bring it into about here. And I'm just going to say it's there, it's going to be nice. So, what I can then do, all these have relationships. I don't know why I exited out of my sketch. All these have relationships. So this profile is always going to be the same as this profile, which is always going to be the same as the profile for that mug I revolved. So I'm going to come in. I don't want to use this, so I'm just going to make a construction geometry. I only need half of this because I want to revolve it, so I'm going to come in. I'll trim up my lines. We'll get rid of this side. So now I've got my profile here. I'm going to come in, close this off. Oh, let me just turn back on that component. Oh! So here's an interesting thing. You can see, I'm going to exit out of my sketch. That sketch is not on the right plane. It's not in the center of the mug. So I can sit there and say, okay, first let me turn off these planes. Let me turn on these planes. So it's on the front plane, but when I drew this mug, it was off over here. So what do I want to do? I want to have this at the center. Well, I don't want to go back and move the mug. I don't want to have to go back and redraw this. So here's a really, really nice thing. So I'm going to come in and I'm actually going to roll back before that sketch. And I'm going to create a plane at the center of this circle. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to go Insert, Reference Geometry, Plane. And I want the distance to be to that point. So that's the center of my mug. Now, what I can do is on this sketch, I can go on it, left click, and I can say Edit Sketch Plane. What that's going to do is allow me to determine where that sketch plane is. So this was where it was. I'm going to say, you know what? I want it on this plane. So there, that is now in the right location versus having to go back. So there's never really not a way to go back and kind of fix a mistake if you do something like that. What I can then do now is do my Revolved Cut. We'll select the sketch. Oh, we want to select the axis there. Select the contours. For some reason, okay, give me a second here. It doesn't want to do it. So when a lot of times when it doesn't want to do something, I always check to make sure that all my vertices or all my lines or dots are connected. So we're going to go Revolve Cut. So I want that. Let's see, I'm doing something wrong here. The question is what am I doing wrong? So I've got thin feature turned on for some reason. I don't know why it defaulted to thin feature. It shouldn't. But now you can see as soon as I turn that off, it gives me exactly what I want. Now you can also see I cut it, but I didn't have that line up high enough. So again, simply come back, go to your sketch, edit it as you want. That's another. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to trim extend. So instead of trimming the line back, I'm going to say go from there up to there. Doesn't want to do it. Oh. So the reason it doesn't want to do it is because I used this as a profile as an offset. So it's only going to go as far as that line. But that's fine. If I wanted to go up there, what I can do is just add on to it. Something's not right. Oh, so you can see again, I want to do it. It says it can't rebuild. This is where it gets hard. You always want to make sure the lines are connected. It's hard to see it here, but if you look, that line is not connected. It needs to be closed off up to there. So usually, whenever I try to do a sketch and it doesn't want to finish the command, the first thing I do is go to make sure that my sketch is closed loop and look for those dots. So there, now we've created our shape. And we've got our cutout. So there's our revolved cut. And we can do that in a variety of ways to make scallops, different things. I know that you guys are working on a water bottle for one of the classes, right? So let's say this was the water bottle and it had that scallop out in the middle. Let me come back. I'm going to delete this cut. So let's say I wanted to put a little scallop in the side of here. What I can do is go to the right view. And I'm going to do a sketch. Now, my center line is going to determine how big of a scallop it is. So I'm just going to put a quick little center line here. And go down there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use that as my revolve cut. Let's exit out. Wants my axis of revolution. So you can kind of see I'm making a shape in order to create the cutout. So now I've got my little scallop. If I come back in and I shell this part, shell, and I'm going to say I want to shell it on there, we'll say, yeah, that's good. I have my scallop on the inside. I can come back and look at that and say, well, that's not quite what I want. And then what you're going to do is you're going to come back and you're going to edit your sketch. Oops. What just happened there? Oh, it got big because my material thickness that I shelled it at is way too thin. Nah. Okay, there we go. Oh, I see what I did there. Somehow, I accidentally grabbed my shell. So we talked about how we can move these commands around. All of a sudden, for some reason, my revolve is cutting through. Well, that's because I accidentally moved my shell before my cut. So it's cutting through. If I take my revolve and move it back before I shell it, it comes back. So that was a simple fat finger mistake. Now, questions about doing the revolve cut and the different ways and things you can do with it? No, we're good. We can then do a swept cut, which is going to be the same thing. We want to have a profile and then a path. So this is where you can get some really neat stuff going. Let me just roll back here. So we're going to do a fancy cut. What I'm going to do is, I could do a profile or anything, but if I want to do something on this surface, I'm going to come in, I'll draw a sketch, and let's just do something fancy. Because let's say I want to do something really pretty or decorative or ornamental. So you can get very complex. What I'm going to do is, that's my path, but I want that path on this surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, let's exit out, and we're going to insert, curve, and we're going to do a split line, or project it. So I'm going to take this projected curve, there, and I'm going to project it onto this face. So now you can see I've got a curve here that's on that face perfectly. So what that means is that's not just a straight planar curve. It wraps around this cup. What I can then do is now I want to draw my profile. So I'm going to start on the bottom, create a new sketch. I want to make sure that it's tied in with that path. We'll come in, We'll make sure that it's piercing on there so that that's the start point. So now I've got defined the path, or the profile, and the path. I could do this path any way, shape, form that I want. But for this, I want to make sure it follows this contoured surface. So what I'm going to do then is come in, we'll go to our features, we're going to do swept cut. It's already selected my sketch. I'm going to come down, select my path. Why didn't you want to do it? I say this and now it doesn't want to do it. Okay. There's my profile. Sweep operation failed to complete. Oh, you know what? I think again, this comes back to me doing things that this circle can't follow that path because it's way too big. So if I come back, let's see if I'm right here. We're going to edit that. We'll make it considerably smaller. And it still doesn't want to do it for some reason. So I'll figure that out another time. Picture that it was a beautiful swept cut. That's all you got to picture. But let's just do it with a simpler one, where I'll come up on here, I'll sketch on this. Let me just get this right. I want to draw my shape, so I want to have the profile start here. So I'll insert a plane. Oops, cancel. So I want to have a profile that starts back here, so I'm going to put the plane there just like I did before. Select that reference geometry for the plane. Select the point. I'll draw my sketch on here. So profile, path. I'll have to figure out why it's not doing that. I might be using a slightly wrong command. And then it'll cut through whatever we've got going on there. So you could do a variety of shapes in that with it. This is basically, it's actually basic. Once I figure out what I was doing wrong here with it being on that curve, I don't know why I didn't want to accept that curve. Let's try one other thing. I want to try something different. I'm going to come in, I'm going to go, and instead of insert a projected curve, I'm going to do a split line, which means that what I'm going to do is I'm going to project this curve, or the sketch. Let's go back to the sketch. Then we're going to project it onto this surface. So if we hide that there, so now I've got a split line, And you can kind of see how it split the surfaces into two pieces. Let me see if that's going to give me what I want. We'll go swept cut. We'll select that. We'll select this profile. And it doesn't want to do it. Okay, I'm doing something wrong here for some reason. So I'll figure that out later. Versus sometimes you want to do something and it's like, I'm going to sit there and figure out until I can, but that's not of value to you guys. Now, if we move into the Lofted Cut, exact same thing. What profiles do we want to do? What shapes do we want to do? It could be as simple as, instead of having a singular path or a singular profile that goes all the way through, maybe we want that shape to transition a little bit. So we want to, let me just draw this here. We'll do a sketch. So down here we want it to be a circle. And because it's a loft, we want it to have two different outcomes. So here we're going to then sketch up here. And let's just have it transition to a square. So again, oh, whoops. What we're basically doing, again, with the loft versus the swept. Swept is a constant profile, where with the loft, what we're saying is we want it to go from this shape to this shape. It can be identical shapes or it can be slightly different. So here, we're going to go with a circle to a square or rectangle. I'm not going to use any guide curves or anything like that. So before you saw where I went from a circle to a large circle to a small circle, and it kept that shape. What this will do is it'll transform it and blend it. So we're going to go Lofted Cut. It's going to ask for my profile. I'll start there. I'll end there. And you can see that what it's doing is it's going from a circle to the rectangle. How many bodies do I have? Oh, so that's why it was yelling at me for different bodies. You can see that I had a little bit of a sliver left over because this square didn't come out far enough to cut the proper object. So when that happens, it basically says, hey, do you want to keep that or do you not want to keep it? I clicked yes because I wasn't quite sure what it was. But now I've got this little hangnail floating out in space. Two things can happen. I can say, oh, you know what? Let me come back and edit this sketch so that it fully cuts everything out. Or let's say I didn't want to change that. When I do this cut, it's telling me that, hey, there's extra bodies there, and there you can kind of see it. What do I want to keep? What do I want to get rid of? So here it's auto-selecting. So if I hit select, it's going to yell and it says, what bodies do you want to keep? All of them. Or I'm going to select them and I'm going to say, you know what? I only want to keep that body. It gets rid of everything else that's floating out there in space. But you can see now, just like with the lofted object or the solid body, I can now make a cut that starts with one form and follows to another form. Questions? Helping? Hurting? Making sense? Okay. You can see we've got really a weird little widget, don't we? So there, that's Extruded Cut. We're not going to worry about hole wizard or boundary cuts until later. One thing that is really nice. So let me scroll back here a fair bit. Okay. This is something that I didn't show in the extrude feature, but you can do the same thing, but in the cut feature. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to go and create a sketch, or I'm going to insert a reference geometry plane, and we're going to drag it off there. Okay. So in one of the water bottles I saw, it had like a relief cut that was the exact shape of the outside exterior part. So what I can do is I'm going to draw a sketch for what I want the shape to look like that I'm going to cut. We'll get it on there. And it can be whatever shape I want. So I'm just, for all intents and purposes, that was the design shape that we wanted. What I'm going to do now is, so we saw the cut command, and I can cut and it extrudes it straight up to there. And it just does a flat cut right into the object. Well, I just want a slight offset of this surface. So what I can do is I can go and I can say, instead of blind, so let's pull this back a little bit. Instead of blind, I want it to offset from a surface. So if it's a planar surface, it will offset from that surface and be flat. But now, since this is curved, it's going to ask what plane do I want. I want that one. You can already see that that shape is following that contour. I'm going to say I want it to be offset by 0.2. Now, it doesn't, you know what, let's go with 0.5. You can see how it's not actually touching that face. It's cutting off the different direction, so I want to reverse the offset so it goes inboard. We'll hit select. And what it does is it recognizes that surface and creates that contour. So you still have that curved surface. It's a simple offset of that. So you can get that form in there. It's not just a simple blank cut. And now you've got that emboss. That is the shape of the mug or the shape of the plastic or whatever you want. Is that reading on this model? Can you guys see that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay. That's a great tool. It didn't always exist. I mean, literally what you would have to do is take that surface, separate it, offset the surface, build a perimeter, extrude the edges, and then subtract that part that you just made from that mug. Well, a whole lot of people said that's way too many steps, and we want to do those slight offsets and embosses constantly. So they came up with that feature. Now, same thing in reverse. Let me do this, because I think this is a neat thing for you guys to see. So that's how I did the emboss, by extruding it a cut. So if I delete that, I can come in, grab this sketch, and I'm going to say I want to extrude a boss. So before I showed you I can do it off of a face, and if it's planar, it's just planar. But what I'm going to do, instead of using the sketch plane, I'm going to use a surface or a face. So there we've got that. Now I don't know if you can see it, but instead of extruding a perfectly flat object, it extrudes off of that face so that this end face matches this contour. Now that's a really large piece. So let's say instead of an deboss, I can do the opposite. And it matches that contour very nicely. Versus just having something that sticks out, that's the shape. Now, what I could have done is I could extrude a chunk out, go to my side profile. So if I was to do something where, if I didn't have this feature, what I would have to do would be to extrude this out and go, okay, there's that. Well, I don't want this to be flat. I want it to be this shape. What I then have to do is come in, go to the front plane, and I would then need to create this shape. I'm just estimating the shape here. I'm going to have to revolve that, and then I would have to do a cut. So you can see there's multiple ways of doing it, but it's those little nuances in each command that will save you. And the reason for that is the way I'm showing you now was how you had to do it. And then someone complained, so they said, okay, well, let's just add that into the cut command. So sometimes it gets hidden. Does that make sense? Okay. Oh. Okay, so I forgot to tell you about that. I just remembered. So you see here where I have to go back in, edit the feature, and drag it in and out. And it doesn't really give me a good visual. What I can do is I can come on it, select the face, and you see how it automatically brings up some commands? Well, I can grab this arrow and I can bring it in and out. Now, you can see, like, I'm trying to, it's not the easiest thing to control. I can move the sketch's position. So this is giving you a little bit more freedom to do things visually. Now you can see here, it's not actually moving it around the object. It's just moving the sketch from left to right. If I move it too far to the right, it's actually not even on the object anymore. That's why it disappeared. But it kind of gives you a little bit of freedom to move things around. And let's say we like this. We'll hit accept. What it did is it moved the sketch. I could also do this where I'm clicking on this, and now I'm going to move the whole sketch this way and be able to update it. You can see here again, if I move it too far off, so there's different ways of moving these things around. That's the nice thing about, again, parametric modeling. There's relationships. Questions on that? That functionality kind of exists in all of them. So you can see where I click on this, my arrows come up. I have a little bit of opportunity to move things around. Now, the one downside to this, it's great as ID people because we can push and pull. But if you're trying to work with an exact dimension, you can see how it's a little bit harder there. It's not as intuitive. So it's one of those things where that's definitely one of those things where I would like, okay, well, let me build, let me push, let me pull, let me play. Okay, let me evaluate. Evaluate is not only does it look good, but as you can see, well, can I use that handle now or not? You know, what did I change? Because when you make a change, what else does it change? So you can see that you still have some freedom to push and pull. It's not like the other software, like Rhino and stuff like that, where you can really just push and pull. We kind of touched on shell. It's 5:46. Do you guys have time for me to show you this one last command? No? Yes? No? Do you want to see the last command? Yes? No?
I have to get to my other class.
Okay. So you know what? We'll save that for next time then. So that's more like in decorative molding. So awesome. I'm going to send you an email because I didn't get to tell you what the assignment is for your next class, which is Tuesday. So I'll send an email out that demonstrates that. The other class has the same assignment, so I'll just send it out to everybody. And then I'll upload this video here today, tomorrow. Okay, everyone? Sorry about the late start.
Thank you.